scrap? Search the ruin. Did you get the scrap?
Come see what's left of my wares. See you around.
Is it better to have a disappointing holiday event or no holiday event at all? I've actually changed my mind on this, and I'll tell you why. In this video, we'll talk about that. We'll also talk about this week's patch, the upcoming news we can expect from the dev team, and later on we'll also talk about some Path of Exile news, as well as a massive studio shutdown that no one saw coming, as well as early reviews of Dragon Age: The Veilguard. It's all coming up. But before we go on, a word from this video's sponsor, Wartune Ultra. Originally launched as a web game over 12 years ago, Wartune Ultra has now returned with a faithful mobile adaptation developed by the original dev team. When I was approached for the sponsorship, I looked at the game and I thought, oh my gosh, this is one of those turn-based web games I used to play back in the day. It's a nostalgia trip for veteran players, with 100% of the core gameplay recreated to keep that same classic feel. And you can play either on mobile or in a web browser. Your data is going to be synced across both platforms. The game revolves around building up your hero, upgrading their combat power through equipment, skills, heroics, or when you want to kind of just relax, cool the battlefield. Increasing how much damage so that we can fragments on. The patch brought some great stuff, like increasing how much damage our horses need to take before we get dismounted, so that the constant Torment 4 dismounting can stop. They also raised the gem fragment cap by a huge amount so that all of us at the cap can stop littering the world with gem fragments everywhere. Raising the cap was a great temporary measure. I still do believe that we need a gem fragment sink added to the game so that we can have something to spend our gem fragments on. Maybe work it into the crafting system, maybe we spend gem fragments to increase our chance of rune upgrades when we're doing rune crafting, right? Getting a rune of the next tier. And speaking of runes, why is our rune inventory tab not big enough to hold every rune? Because of that, we have to put runes in our stash, and now I need more stash tabs. Path of Exile introduced years ago the concept of specialized stash tabs that are designed to hold specific things. Can we just get like a rune stash tab? This way we can just put our runes, they automatically get slotted into the correct slot, they're neatly organized. Now, unfortunately, the patch also started causing a bunch of people to experience frequent game crashes. It seems to be related to DLSS. The devs implemented a temporary fix, which was pushed to Battle.net users only, I believe, that would automatically disable DLSS. And while that did help for some people, I was still hearing about people experiencing crashing issues. Hopefully this will be resolved soon. We also got word from Community Director Adam Fletcher this week, confirming that there will be a mid-season update and that there will be a small stream to talk about what's going to happen coming up in the future, as well as more news related to game balance. As we all know, the current state of balance is terrible. Spiritborn are a million times more powerful than other classes because of some bugs or unintended behaviors within their toolkit, so I look forward to hearing what balance changes will come mid-season. I've said from the start that the Spiritborn is the most well-designed class from a standpoint of customization and build versatility, but because it's overpowered right now, it's basically outshining every class at everything. It basically outshining, but because it's overpowered right now, it's basically outshining every class at everything. It's a better spellcaster than a sorcerer, it's tankier than a barbarian, it's faster than a rogue. It overall just feels like a superior nature class to the druid. The only thing it can't do is a minion build, so necromancers are safe for now. Though, if you want to get into the deep lore, necromancers summon spirits from the spirit realm. They do tap into the spirit realm, while the Spiritborn class can fully harness the potential of the spirit realm. Seriously though, balance is in such a bad state that non-Spiritborn players report having problems finding parties to play with. Lots of reports of people getting kicked from group finder parties if they are not a Spiritborn. Now again, we also got the start of the Halloween event this week, and the hot topic of the week is how low effort and disappointing the event is. The event includes free cosmetics that you can claim in the shop, a 35% XP buff, 50% gold find buff, and the meet or treat event. Basically, any shrine that you run into in a dungeon, specifically, will either spawn a treasure goblin or an infernal butcher. The way I see it, the XP buff is there to make the core gamers happy, or at least to appease us. Now is a great time to log in and try to blast our way to Paragon 300. And the meet or treat event is for the more casual players to just have a bit of fun. More on that in a little bit. First, a quick note. Because we're running more pits than ever to blast XP, one thing I found is that pits can feel worse than Greater Rifts in D3 because they only have 2 floors, and you can easily find yourself having to backtrack once you reach a dead end on floor 2 of a pit. One improvement I will say over D3 Greater Rifts is wherever you are, if you're split up in a party, when you complete the pit, the portal opens for you to go to the boss. You don't have to look around for the boss. So at least that is an improvement over the D3 Rifts. But otherwise, if you full clear both floors, then yeah, you don't run into this issue of having to backtrack. But the pit feels like that's the thing in the game that's there for blaster players. And blaster players, going by their blaster playstyle, will run into this issue a lot of getting to the end and then having to backtrack. Nightmare dungeons, that's the gameplay, that's the game element designed to have that slow dungeon crawl, clear everything, or clear at your own pace, kind of do whatever you want. Undercity, that's meant to be challenged to carefully check corners and manage your monster kills to maximize your rewards. but pits feel like they're meant for blasting. So I do wonder what the design intent is behind not allowing us a third floor, which I honestly think just having a third floor would just solve this problem. Or at least giving the pits a circular design rather than the mostly straight lines that we get that we get. It just feels like this is a problem that was solved in Diablo 3 with Greater Rifts years ago. But I digress from the Halloween event. So, the 35% XP buff felt like it was added so that the Blaster players wouldn't complain about the event, because the meter treat event is not worth going out of your way for. I have a full video going over how to get the most out of all elements of the Halloween event. Do check that out. But basically we recorded 100 dungeon runs to see if anything makes farming these meter treat shrines worth it. And the conclusion basically is that if you happen to be doing an dungeon, then these shrines are a nice little bonus, but it doesn't seem worth going out of your way to farm them. For a more casual gamer though, I imagine these are fun little surprises, right? If you're just doing Nightmare Dungeons, hey, now you have a shrine that's going to spawn generally a goblin, sometimes a butcher. Oh, and not to beat a dead horse, but this event has highlighted how problematic conduit shrines are. When you transform, you cannot even kill a goblin if you're a conduit. These shrines were they were clearly overlooked when the difficulty rebalance was done for Torment 4 and everything. It's the only thing that makes sense. And at this point, I would just prefer the conduits be disabled. Just remove them from the game until they can be addressed. D3 conduits are fine. But onto the crux of the matter. The event itself, which most people find disappointing. Now, I've always been of the mentality, would you rather get what we got or nothing at all? Sure, would I have liked a better event, more elaborate, more fun? Yeah, I would have, but hey, at least I got a 35% XP buff, so I can't complain, because the alternative would be getting nothing at all. However, Rax put out a video recently that made me reconsider my thoughts on this. He brought up a point that I'd never thought of before. Reputation. We've had 1 year of holiday events in Diablo 4, and none of them have been considered bangers by the community. So when Blizzard announces a new holiday event for D4, are you excited? Or at this point, are you just setting your expectations in the gutter and expecting disappointment? Sometimes it is actually better to release nothing at all than something subpar. In fact, this is the very same logic that allowed early Blizzard to become the industry powerhouse that it became. It grew into a household name because Blizzard leadership refused to release a mediocre product. Blizzard canceled roughly 50% of all the games they ever started working on because they'd rather throw away years of work than release something that would have tarnished their reputation. Because it was a time when everyone would be excited for whatever new game Blizzard had in the works, because we all knew that whatever it was gonna be a banger. So yes, well, for me, as someone who will continue to play Diablo 4 and play any new events they release, it is better for me personally to get something rather than nothing. But for the community at large, and for capturing attention outside of the community, I think it's better to just have events that everyone speaks positively about. Oh, did you hear about what Diablo 4 did for Halloween? Nah, man, I haven't played in months. Should I log on? As opposed to having people just hear more negativity. Oh, did you hear? D4 had another lame event. Lol, what a joke. I'm gonna go back to playing PoE. Now, despite me coming to this change of heart, Rax and I actually have two very different takeaways. He says that more effort should be put into these events to make them bangers. My takeaway is drop the events for now. And here's why. Blizzard has a finite amount of resources to work with. And I know the answer is Blizzard is rich, they have all the resources in the world. Here's the thing. This is not a problem that you can just throw money at. This is not a problem that you can just throw manpower at. D4 already has a large team. Hiring more people at this point doesn't allow them to get more work done when it comes to ideas. It just makes the entire machine move more slowly. You reach a point of diminishing returns on team sizes, and when you get too many chefs in the kitchen just arguing with each other and unable to settle on a vision, smaller teams are perfectly capable of executing your event, as we've seen other games do. So it's really not about throwing money at the problem. It's about what the designers are able to devote their attention to. And if everyone will be loving the season themes, I would say yes, put manpower behind making a banger holiday event. But right now, I want 100% of Blizzard's design manpower dedicated to making sure Season 7 is an absolute banger season theme. The Season 6 theme was a disappointment. Season 6 is carried by the strength of Patch 2.0 and all the new game systems. But the theme itself, nothing really to write home about. And this has been the case for the past couple of seasons. In fact, the only season theme that people really considered a banger was Season 2. That's 1 out of 6 seasons at this point that people really liked. I don't want Season 7's theme to be another disappointment. I want it to be the best theme that we've gotten yet. I don't want resources pulled from making Season 7 amazing in order to make a 7-day event that's just going to be a footnote in an otherwise 3-month season. Once we reach a point where we're getting banger seasons, then yes, you can comfortably pull resources away from that to make banger holiday events too. But I would rather get banger season themes and no holiday events than banger holiday events and mediocre season themes. Now, of course, I would rather everything in the game always be a banger, and hopefully we can get there one day. But for now, we need to prioritize, and I don't think it's worth getting the car repainted before we get the brake pads replaced. Now, all that said, I'm surprised that we didn't at least see some holiday decorations thrown around. Because art assets, that's something that you can throw money at. You can throw manpower at. You can outsource. We had nice decorations for the Midwinter Blight event, if I recall correctly. I know Diablo's already dark and evil themed, but they could have built up a little lore around some kind of folktale style event, maybe a spooky harvest festival, some pumpkins in there. Midwinter Blight had their Krampus monster, the red cloaked horror, that was nicely tied into the lore, felt natural. Maybe we could have gotten a headless harvester, if you want to be cliche. And I think these kind of short-term events can also be a way to tie in community goals. The Helldiver style, right? Kill X demons by a certain date to unlock something for everyone. Like for the event we got, maybe they would have put a community goal of kill 6 million goblins, and now all those scrolls of contained goblins from the Dark Citadel would actually come in handy. I think the keys to a good event are, first off, when people log in, they can tell in-game that there's an event going on by more than just a splash screen, right? Decorations and such. Some change to the game world. Then, of course, there should be some fun activity to partake in, and there should be rewards too. And it feels as though the holiday event that we got, the Halloween event, was basically designed to be as innocuous and non-destructive as possible. They could have locked the cosmetics behind having to farm 100 of those metered treat shrines, and people would have hated that. Let's face it. That's what happened with the Christmas event, right? They gave cosmetics, and we had to engage in a holiday event, and a lot of people complained about that. So this was like a response to that. But maybe if the shrines were not only found in nightmare dungeons, maybe people would have found them more fun, been more receptive to it. Maybe if the shrines would actually be like Diablo 3 bandit shrines, spawning like 10 goblins instead of just one. Maybe that would have been more fun. I don't know. What do you guys like to see in a holiday event? Sound off in the comments. And I actually have a theory. I believe during the Lunar New Year event, they added some shop skins, I think, for purchase. And I believe that the spooky costume skins that we got at the start of Season 7 in the shop, I believe those were intended to be saved for Halloween. I mean, look at these. Just imagine that these were released around Halloween. Don't they feel like costume-style spooky Halloween skins? Doesn't it all make sense? But then I imagine some decision was made to release them at the season start instead of Halloween, possibly for two reasons. One of these two reasons, or both of them. Either one, they knew they didn't have much for the Halloween event and they didn't want to take the heat of having a small event that just adds expensive skins to buy, or two, because I imagine most skin sales probably happen within the first week or two of a season before people fade away. Alright, let's end the Diablo 4 news on a lighthearted note here by drawing attention to this creation by Reddit user raw_0. He comes from the future with a Diablo 4 item from Season 39. Godly Plate of the Whale. Ancestral, mythic, heroic armor. From Season raw_0. Lighthearted note here by the season before people fade away. Alright, let's end the Diablo 4 news on a lighthearted note here by drawing attention to this creation by Reddit user raw_0. He comes from the future with a Diablo 4 item from Season 39. Godly Plate of the Whale. Ancestral, mythic, heroic armor. Hexed Souls of Percival's Blessing A+. Plus 230 protected maximum life. Plus 9% critical strike chance against crouched flying enemies. Pledged souls collected 10+. Numb hit, up to a 5% chance to gain 700 attack rating. Plus 30% chance for Rend Bleeding to consume Tainted Heralds, Brutal Barbarian only. Plus 7 Draconic ranks of Whirlwind. Casting Rend while under a Slasher's potion effect grants 1 stack of Hidden Skill Undying Brawler that deals damage to enemies that are looking to their left. Gain 20% max life for 6 seconds while supercharged. Boat of Madness item, Crangled. The Crangled reference there, and the entire joke to be honest, it comes from the Path of Exile community, where years ago someone made a very similar parody joke in PoE. And speaking of Path of Exile, PoE 2 game director Jonathan Rogers gave a heartfelt announcement this week that the PoE 2 beta will be delayed by 3 weeks, now starting on December 6th. He apologized and took full accountability for not leaving enough time to handle some server-side infrastructure issues that came up at the last minute. And the internet, like it always does, raged at him in anger. Nope. In fact, in an immense and very pleasant surprise, everyone was super understanding, accepting, and civil in response. Disappointed, sure, but overall it was sort of a, hey, don't worry about it, buddy, kind of reaction. Again, incredibly surprising for a game community to react this way, and I think it's a testament to GGG's integrity and the goodwill that they have cultivated in the community over the past decade. Then they announced that the next Path of Exile 1 League would be delayed, and everyone lost their shit. No, I'm kidding. People were a little more miffed about this one, it seems, but that's mostly because of promises that PoE 2 would not impact PoE 1, and it kind of feels like the new league is getting delayed because of PoE 2. The 3.26 expansion will be announced in late January 2025, meaning it's likely going to launch in February, and this makes Settlers of Kalgur the longest PoE league yet. And thank goodness, it's at least a really good league. In fact, it's such a good league that we're basically getting the meme, yes, we've had Settlers of Kalgur, but what about second Settlers of Kalgur? On November 7th, GGG is basically relaunching Settlers of Kalgur with a little twist. A new league begins on this date with a fresh economy and ladder reset. It'll be the same Settlers of Kalgur, but they're adding a touch of Necropolis. Monsters in every area will be affected by a pool of mods. Settlers of Kalgur, in fact, is PoE league yet in February, and this makes late January 2025. PoE 1, and it kind of feels shit. No, I'm kidding. People were a little more miffed about this one, it seems, but that's mostly because of promises that PoE 2 would not impact PoE 1, and it kind of feels like the new league is getting delayed because of PoE 2. The 3.26 expansion will be announced in late January 2025, meaning it's likely going to launch in February, and this makes Settlers of Kalgur the longest PoE league yet. And thank goodness, it's at least a really good league. In fact, it's such a good league that we're basically getting the meme, yes, we've had Settlers of Kalgur, but what about second Settlers of Kalgur? On November 7th, GGG is basically relaunching Settlers of Kalgur with a little twist. A new league begins on this date with a fresh economy and ladder reset. It'll be the same Settlers of Kalgur, but they're adding GGG is basically relaunching Settlers of Kalgur with a little twist. A new league begins on this date with a fresh economy and ladder reset. It'll be the same Settlers of Kalgur, but they're adding a touch of Necropolis. Monsters in every area will be affected by a pool of mods which you can customize, but unlike Necropolis, there will be rewarding mods. Also, if you reach level 50, you are guaranteed one Settlers mystery box per account. In other news, Sony is shutting down Firebox Studios, the developers of a move that absolutely no one saw coming. Fewer than 1,000 concurrents for a AAA multiplayer release on Steam is catastrophic. These are the kinds of numbers that lead to studio closures, and I feel bad for developer Firewalk Studios. This game was doomed, and I expect to hear news of servers shutting down for good within 6 months, and Firewalk Studios shutting down within a year. Firewalk Studios was founded in 2018 and it was bought by Sony in 2023 because Sony liked how development on Concord was going. Concord was in development for 8 years before release, and it was rumored to have a budget of $400 million. That's not going to be confirmed now by a new report from Concord that, based on the initial development deal for the game being just over $200 million, and that figure did not include the studio buyout price, nor the marketing, nor the game's delayed launch, which means extra salary time, or the sale of IP rights. So this makes the $400 million figure sound entirely plausible. A game's marketing budget alone could account for up to half of its cost. This makes Concord the biggest flop, not just in video game history, but in the entertainment history as a whole. The biggest Hollywood flops cost like $200 million, and they still recoup some of that, like generally about $50 million at least. Concord lost $400 million and has nothing to show for it. They made like $1 million in sales and then offered refunds to everyone. All this in less than 2 months after the game launched. Sony had previously made an announcement suggesting that they may have been evaluating what to do with Concord, maybe tried to reboot it or something, but clearly they've determined that it is not worth salvaging. And as I expected, when you see a flop like this in the AAA video game industry, this generally leads to a studio closure, and that's exactly what happens then. This should never be celebrated. People have lost their jobs, their livelihoods. Even if you want to ascribe blame to some people, there are countless blameless individuals who are now without work. Good luck to them all. In other news, Dragon Age The Veilguard released this week. It currently has decent reviews on OpenCritic. We see a top critic score of 82 out of 100, with 76% of critics recommending it. For reference, Dragon Age Inquisition had an 88 out of 100, with 92% of critics recommending it. On Steam, the reviews are mostly positive. 79% of them are positive, based on about 5,000 reviews so far. The early reviews from journalists and influencers are overall generally positive, but there definitely are people who didn't like it. This title actually seems quite divisive. Some common things I saw was that the game takes several hours to really hit its stride. Also, combat doesn't seem great. I've heard of a number of reviewers who lowered the difficulty of combat later in the game, not because it was challenging, but just because enemies were becoming bullet sponges and the combat was getting repetitive and boring. I've also seen the dialogue between characters being criticized, and I've watched a couple of clips myself where the dialogue did seem really bad. Which is a shame, because for me, the dialogue between characters was really a highlight of the franchise. The game does seem to be selling well, however. It beat Jedi Survivor to become EA's biggest single-player game on Steam ever, having peaked at about 70,000 concurrent players as of the time of this recording. Now, 70,000 is a respectable number, but this isn't anything close to chart-topping for Steam launches. Over the weekend, I'm sure we'll see those numbers rise, as well as more reviews pour in. And honestly, I think there may be a lot of hesitation from people on this one, with reviews being good but not great, and with the game's initial marketing being pretty poor. I think a lot of people are waiting to see how the dust settles with this one and what other gamers really think about it. The more cartoony visual style was a controversial change for many Dragon Age fans, and the first trailer really left a sour taste in everyone's mouth with its bizarre stylistic choices, despite subsequent trailers being more traditional and making the game look really good. If you played The Veilguard, what are your thoughts? What is your verdict? Do you recommend it? Do you not? Why? Sign off in the comments. Meanwhile, seems some folks at BioWare already want to distance themselves from the latest Dragon Age. The director of Mass Effect 5, Michael Gamble, took to Twitter to post earlier this week, quote, "Lots of people asking me about Mass Effect now that Veilguard news around, and October 31st is close. Both are from the studio, but Mass Effect is Mass Effect. How you bring a sci-fi RPG to life is different than other genres or IPs, and has to have different kinds of love." Someone replied, "Please don't Pixar Mass Effect like you guys did with Dragon Age." Gamble replied, "I'm not sure I agree with the Pixar thing, but Mass Effect is photorealistic and will be as long as I'm running it." While he isn't exactly throwing Veilguard under the bus, he is making clear that he acknowledges that the Veilguard has taken a different step for the Dragon Age franchise, and that he is not intended to take this same step with Mass Effect. That's going to wrap up this week's video, but do be sure to check out last week's video, in which we discussed just how long it takes to reach Paragon 300 in Diablo 4. Also, folks, if you want some free cosmetics in Diablo 4, from October 8th to November 5th, you can get cosmetics just by watching quick streams. There'll be new cosmetics to farm up every week. You gotta watch at least 3 hours a week to earn the cosmetics of the week. You can watch me at twitch.tv/Riker. Also, during this time period, if you buy or gift 2 subs, you get this horse, and 4 subs will get you the horse armor as well. Thanks for watching. Special thanks to my Patreon supporters for making these videos possible. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, and subscribe to join Riker's Raiders for more gaming content.
I can't do that.
Dark Souls lore is so fucking cool. I agree. I don't understand a fucking thing about it, but it is really cool. Each game had the best bosses. Dark Souls 3 had the best bosses. Who do we want for this one? You know, we get a classic. We'll do a zip one. This is like old school stream lore. Back when I was streaming on YouTube, we did a Dark Souls remaster run. And we did it with Zitler. Fucking idiot. Immediately backed out. The lore behind Zitler was basically he was a Zit come to life. The first unpopped, unkindled Lord of Cinder. I don't remember exactly what his face looked like, if I'm being honest. Will I do the NPC questlines? I will probably do exactly what I just did for Dark Souls 2 and do the vast majority of the bosses. I only missed 4 bosses in all of Dark Souls 2. It's looking pretty good. I haven't seen Zitler in a long time, but if I remember correctly, this is exactly what he looked like. Kind of like a little... I don't even know, some kind of... It's like the labia majora, but with 2 eyes there. Something like Lovecraft would have nightmares about, I think. It's not bad. I'm just gonna say it's a relative of Zitler instead of Zitler reincarnated. Because I don't remember it enough. Man, that schnoz means business. This is like that nose from the